You wouldn't get anything. Yeah. The one thing that fighters do a great job of attracting attention.
Mm-hmm.
Fighters can do a terrible job of spending that attention. And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Today, we've got Brody Farber with us, former UFC fighter, currently training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, no gi, not gi. We're going to talk about that. And investor, entrepreneur, a lot of things on the go. Brody, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, man. Looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I think we just got to get right into it. This is the facts. Gi, no gi, the door is open.
For me, it's no gi all day, man. Yeah, man. I used to get in a lot of trouble for saying this. I was a purple belt for longer than I was every other belt combined because I stopped wearing the gi, and that was kind of when I was doing most of my fights. And so I never liked training the gi. Even when I trained in the gi, I would never use it against somebody. So they would use it against me. I would never gi choke someone. I would never control them with it. And so for me, it's kind of cool to see how it's changed, and now everyone's kind of more going that way and not really wearing it, you know? So for me, it's no gi all day. I'm not a fan. I don't like my fingers getting broken. I don't like getting my face all scratched up. I like a faster game. I think it fits better with a kind of realistic fight, you know, unless you're fighting someone in Alaska with a jacket on or something. It's just what I like. Plus, I'm better at it too. So, you know, it's just better for me.
So the summary out of that is you're just too pretty to go fight in a gi is what you told me.
Surprisingly, I look worse when I train in a gi than after a lot of fights, because I think it's the way maybe I use my face or my head and stuff, and maybe because I'm not used to it, and that gi gets across my face, and then I put my chin down, and it's scratching me up, and I can look like I got in a serious fight just from a gi jiu-jitsu match. So definitely, I want to keep the looks that I have. So I'll stick with it.
I know with wrestlers do a lot of really good job of using their head as the sort of that fifth appendage, you know, in a lot of positioning and posturing. Is that maybe what you're doing in the way that you kind of use your body?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Because when I started with wrestlers, judo guys, and sambo guys. So that was kind of my inception. I went on, I wrestled a little bit in junior college. Definitely, that's more my style, being on top. And I definitely, use my head, use my face, and it gets pretty scratched up when I got the gi on. So.
Now, speaking of scratched up, I was looking on SureDog with your record. You've got quite a great record of, you know, the people that you fought against. You went out on a couple wins on your SureDog record. It must feel good that you can look at that scoreboard and say you've definitely accomplished a lot.
Yeah, it is. But I think the same thing with most guys, with most fighters. You kind of always expect to win, and I don't really care about the times I won. It was kind of expected, but the losses will always bother you, you know? So in my head, it's like I only kind of think about the losses, you know? To be honest, and I think a lot of guys would like that. They're kind of talking about it more now, to where guys are the best in the world and they lose once and it's like their life's over. It doesn't matter how much they've done. And yeah, definitely the losses always stick out. Overall, I had, between boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, and MMA, I had 46 professional fights. I won most of them, but still, I still kind of have a little bit of bad taste overall of kind of how it went. So,
well, that comes with being the perfectionist. I think people who are trying to get the highest level, the successes are sort of understood just to be the truth. And then the losses are the exception to the truth. And what they're trying to do is reconcile those losses with the truth is what they believe is they should never have lost those matches. And so they're always uncomfortable. And that being constantly uncomfortable allows them to become more of a perfectionist and become a better practitioner of what they're doing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, most definitely.
I think that's definitely. Now, it's interesting when you look at that psyche of an North American perspective versus my understanding is when you go to Thailand,
Hmm.
A lot of the times it's not wins and losses, it's more number of fights. And, I fought 50 times, I fought 100 times, 300 times. And sometimes, that is the psyche of the Thai. Is that what you've sort of seen as well?
I think maybe a little bit, just maybe the singular losses don't matter as much, but it's still the wins matter, but they fight so often. And when we're talking about, I know guys out there that I've trained with that had 400 fights. It's
Yeah.
very common for someone to have 200, up to three. They start really young, so the damage that they take, as a 10-year-old isn't that much. They don't train very hard as far as they're not beating each other in the gym. So they train very light, and then when they fight, 'cause they got to fight every week, every 2 weeks, every month, they save it for that. So a lot of the guys, especially back in the day, like when I started, guys were killing each other in the gym. Like
Mm,
most of the damage that most fighters have is from the gym. It's not even from the fights. So with the ties, they might have lost 18, 20, 30 times. When you're talking about 30 fights, 300 fights, it's a very small amount, and you can make up for that loss that you had in 2 weeks, where opposed
mm,
to a lot. I was listening to Michael Chandler on Andy Frisella the other day, and he talked about how and it's clear because I just listened to it. He went 688 days without winning. He had three losses in a row, and it's not like you're going to fight next week or something. It's okay, 8 months from now, it's a year from now, and then you lose again, and then it's another, 6 to 8 months to a year, and then it takes a long time to kind of get that back. So, um, the length of time you got to sit in it before maybe the opportunity to redeem yourself is can be quite a while,
yeah,
especially as you
it's
get to higher level.
when you look at Michael Chandler, he was in GrowthCon just a few weeks back with Grant Cardone speaking on the stage there. And one of the things he's doing is he's holding back on some other fights because he's really aiming for the Conor McGregor fight.
He's
As
got it
is,
now.
well, he's got it, but when it happens, it will be the next thing.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so he's got a lot of the haters saying, this is holding back your career. Every month that goes by is a month that you're not fighting somebody else. And so it's one of those things where I think the fighter has to make that call. And that's a tough call to make for somebody like Michael Chandler. I mean, every year you're getting older. Every 6 months you're
Hmm.
older. And it goes by really fast.
Yeah, there's definitely a window. I think though for Chandler, especially against McGregor, this time is only going to benefit Chandler.
Mm.
McGregor's is the money fight to anybody, and
Yep.
and the biggest thing with that is that the longer it goes, I think the more advantage Chandler gets. Because
Hmm.
as good as McGregor is, he's rich. He's partying. He's got a good life. He's out on his yacht. He's doing lots of stuff. He's still one of the most talented guys ever, and he can still win. But
Hmm.
Chandler's working every day. Chandler's different. He's doing what he needs to do. So every day he's just building and building and building. Where McGregor might be going the other way or maybe sustaining. And it's like the advantages I believe are gaining for Chandler the longer it goes. And I think I mean, who else is he going to fight that's a bigger fight? You're not going to get a better one. So to
No,
kind of
absolutely
risk,
not.
so to risk that and then to be the kind of man that Chandler is to really like just keep working day to day and keep trusting it's going to happen. That if they show up and it happens when it's supposed to, that I think it's a very good thing for him. And yeah, so I like them both. I'm a fan of both, but I'm definitely you know rooting for Chandler to win that fight. I think it'd be very cool to see that.
I'm a huge fan of skinny Conor McGregor. I'm not as
Yes.
big of a fan as beefy Conor McGregor. I
Yeah.
think it doesn't work to his advantage, in
Hmm.
my opinion, just based on the style of how he fights and his quick reflexes and his precision and accuracy and
Hmm.
be able to just execute at a moment's notice. I think getting beefier and getting larger, I don't know if that'll work to his advantage. What's your thoughts?
I agree with you. I mean, his biggest thing is I think he's got uh, some of the best anticipation and timing there is, and
Mm,
just his natural ability to adapt and fight. But I also know it's fun and it's cool to be big and strong. Just, as being a fighter that's fought at lower weights, and even looking back at pictures and being like, dude, it looked like shit, you know, and it doesn't feel good. And then it's like in between fights, you know, you can eat what you want, you look good. It's cool to be, you know, to be big and strong and look good. And same thing, he's rich as fuck. He's making tons of money. He can do anything he wants. You know, he's looking good. He's in movies and stuff, but Chandler's just keeping working. He's just working and working. You know, he doesn't party. He's a family man. He's on it. So I think just that, you know, just that clarity and focus, especially matched with, the distractions on the other side
Hmm.
and being bigger and it also, it's hard for people to adapt to carrying around that extra muscle. You know, the timing, the strength, things get thrown off. And same thing. And McGregor's one that he could easily pull it off. I would not be shocked if he won. But at the same time, it's just like it's all those little things that add up. So, you know, it's in the fight game. It's one little mistake, you know, one little half a second, and there's a lot of things that could, you know, work against McGregor, and there's a lot of things that could work for Chandler. So it's definitely interesting, and I'm sure all fights, everyone wants to see McGregor fight. Same thing with Chandler. It's going to be amazing. So it'll be cool. I don't
It
really get
is.
excited for too many fights anymore, but yeah, I'd like to see that one. It'll be
Yeah, that one's going to be super exciting. I was excited for UFC 300. I think that was an amazing event. I think, you know, when you watch Max Holloway and Gaethje go at it,
yeah,
that was just
yeah,
something to behold. I
yeah,
love that fight. It was just such a good fight to watch.
yeah, most definitely. And just those two guys too. There couldn't be two more just deserving, just honorable, cool fighters than those two. And the way it ended, I mean, come on, and even with that, like I always kind of pick bets and stuff before. And honestly, with that one, I abstained from picking a couple because I just didn't know enough about. But I
Hmm.
picked everyone that I picked on that. I picked everything correctly except for that fight. Honestly, I gave the advantage to Gaethje. Thought he was a little bit bigger. You know, the chance of them
Hmm.
taking out Max at some point were higher. I definitely didn't think it was like a huge advantage, but that was the only one that I picked wrong, honestly. But that was pretty awesome, man.
I think
Pretty
he
cool.
won the mind games because I think he brought Gaethje back to old Gaethje, not new Gaethje. I think
Yeah.
old Gaethje was get in the pocket, you know, bite down on the mouthpiece and just go at it. And
Yeah.
where Gaethje was migrating more into a strategic fighter, and
Uh-huh.
Max brought him to the older version of himself and then beat him at that game. And I
Yeah.
thought that's why I think Max won that fight. It was a mental game. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts?
It could be. I mean, I also just think as well that technically Max is better,
Hmm.
but that doesn't always matter in fights as much. Gaethje's got that thing where he'll put himself in the fire. He's tough as hell. He's wild. He'll get in there. I just figured at some point the chances were higher that he would find Max, that he would turn it dirty, that, you know, his cardio is good. And like I
Hmm.
said, I thought it was a pretty close fight, just almost a pick 'em, but, you know, you have to just, based on what I've seen and what I know, I gave a little bit of advantage to Gaethje. And, yeah, but I do think technically Max is better. It's just
Yeah,
in that 25 minutes, can that better withstand the little extra power and the grit and the just guy that's going to be in your face? You know,
absolutely.
so
Yeah, I think so too. And so I want to go back to one of the things that you talked about earlier on the idea of damage. And when we look at somebody like Gaethje, it's a great, you know, commentary
hmm
around this is with those styles of fighter who are that sort of in the pocket, in the fire. Um, Back in the day, it used to always be in the gyms. They would fight, you know, to the death almost in the gym. You know, from a
yeah,
training perspective. Are you and you're saying now it's starting to shift in the way that they train within the gyms now?
it's big time. Everyone's a lot smarter now. I mean, back in the day too, like with me, I had to go to different places to train stuff. It was like I went with the wrestlers to the wrestling room. I went to the jujitsu with the jujitsu guys. The boxing was in the boxing gym. The Muay Thai, almost I had to go overseas to do it, you know. And then only very much at the end was we had with a team, and we could kind of combine it together. And so a lot of times, yeah, you go into these boxing gyms and people would kill each other. You know, there wasn't same thing that the coaches didn't know. I mean, even with football, they're getting a lot smarter on protocols. I mean,
Hmm.
people are learning, they're seeing the guys that are retired and they're seeing the damage that they took. They're just realizing that once you know how to fight and that you've been thrown in the fire and you can survive, that you don't want to do that every day. There's no reason to go kill each other with your buddy. Like take the time off, stay sharp, save that for those fights where you're going to need it. 'Cause yeah, you're not getting paid in the gym. You're not, and there's as much as guys don't realize in the beginning, you're going to have a life after this, and hopefully you can be good for yourself, your family, your everything after. So you don't want to leave it all in the gym. So
Well,
um,
it's so hard for fighters, I think, to look to that life afterwards because they're so caught up in the moment of what they're doing. I mean, I hear it all the time when I'm in the gym. You're talking to some young guy. I'm 48 right now, and they're 27 or
mhm,
31 or whatever, and you said, "Man, I feel old." They're like, "Oh, I feel old too." And you're like,
yeah,
"I don't think you understand the level of what feeling old feels like." So
yeah,
their connection to the future, it's a hard thing to connect, and they get lost in the moment of the today.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And just with that, it's the mileage though. Some of those 28 or 31-year-old guys are old,
Hmm.
like mileage wise.
Hmm.
And it's just like especially if they started out, if they've been fighting since they were 20 or 21, the
Yep.
mileage that they have, man. I mean, we had one guy on our team that I remember. Fuck, he was one of the best, but when he showed up in the morning, he could hardly move, man. And it was like we teased him. He was like an
Yep.
old diesel truck. Like he had to warm up. Like he would almost just like hobble in and just slow. And I remember even thinking like, fuck, man, is that how I'm gonna be? Like that looks rough. But he gets warmed up, he gets going, and
Yep.
still one of the best guys in the gym, just like moving fine. But yeah, man, it can be, and some people, they're just made for it. They're just durable. There's a lot of guys that are super good fighters. Their bodies are just not made for it. They'll
No.
get injured. It happens, and a couple good injuries or, too many of this, too many of that. And as good as they are, then it's just over, man. So
Yeah, their body's not working at the same level as their technical acumen is working at, or their willpower,
yeah,
right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
willpower is usually there. It's the body. It just gives out. And yeah,
Hmm.
and then it cascades some little thing, and then it turns into something else, and that time, or there's a surgery, and a lot of guys that come back too fast just because they've got the mentality they want to get in there, and then it happens again, and yeah, before they know it, they're just pulled from it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 No, definitely. And some of the earlier stuff we were talking about, when somebody's getting into fighting and somebody's really starting to think about that as a career or an adjacent career to whatever they're doing, there's a lot of pitfalls. I mean, I know early in the game, back when you look at early MMA, I mean, it was underground style fighting. What did the early game look like for you when you're in the MMA world?
it was wild, man. But it was something that from day one, I had to do it. It was, I mean, I was going to college. I was going to go to law school. It was like set. That was what I was going to do. I went and trained one day. I was like, nope, I'm not going to school anymore. Like, I, I switched because I was like, well, I'm not going to finish this and then go to law school another 2 years. And so I switched to a business degree, which I ended up slowly kind of doing and then later finishing it. But it was like, yeah, you would lose money most of the time. The amount of like stuff that was paid. I mean, I even had fights where I remember I had a last minute fight in Vegas. So I got taken in. So we have to do the medicals, then after the fight, I had to get stitches. The promoter didn't cover any of it. So like however many months later, I'm getting calls from creditors and I've got marks on my credit. They're like, you owe for an eye test, you owe for, stitches, all this stuff. Like the promotion's supposed to take care of that. They're like, no, the check bounced. So you owe like, for your eye exam, $200 for this. And then now there's late fees and your stitches in the hospital after were 1,300, but now it's late because it wasn't paid. I had a same thing. I had another buddy that he fought this guy, I think in Scotland or something. And the check was back in the day, it was actually a decent check. I think it was like 5 grand. The same
Yeah.
thing. He cashed it because he went to travel. They pulled it back out of his account. He had all these problems. I mean, there was, man, I've seen that so many times where promoters will rip you off. They won't pay for stuff. They plan on the event doing well, and then it doesn't do well. Or just the amount of money too that we used to fight for was pretty crazy. And you just had to love it and do it because you wanted to. It wasn't something where you were going to make, you were going to make a lot of money. Because if you weren't Chuck Liddell, or a couple other guys, yeah, man, you weren't making anything.
You weren't making anything, yeah. The one thing that fighters do a great job of attracting attention.
Mm-hmm.
Fighters can do a terrible job of spending that attention.
Yeah.
In the sense that they don't understand how to bank it, and they let it sort of flitter away and go into the pocket of the organization and not also go into their pocket that they can leverage. Do you see that sort of as a theme with fighters?
Yes, but from the inside though, and this was a point of contention with a lot of people, is that the big promotions will control that. They want control of that, and they actually that was why Randy Couture was having the big problems. Like, they own your image for the video games. Like, you don't get like with the UFC, they had a problem with, I remember with Couture, with Fitch, a lot of guys that, they basically own all those rights, and it's up to them, and different people have different things, but like, the UFC will negotiate with the video game, and then they'll give you whatever portion because they control your image. They control all that stuff. So a lot of the guys, they're focused on fighting. That's not really their expertise or their forte, but the truth is that it's controlled by a lot of these promotions. And so it was up to them to kind of like, no, you can't do that because that makes us look bad, or we're going to negotiate for you. You really can't go and get too much outside. We used to be able to get a lot of sponsorships, and so that's where we used to make a lot more money than even fighting a lot of times.
Oh, for
It was
sure.
cool back in the day where people would throw a decent amount of money at you. Just even local businesses that wanted to be cool, to bigger ones just throwing money at it. They have a budget they don't really know, or they're just fans. But they kind of took that away, and same thing, got one sponsorship and then put it down the line. But yeah, our shorts and the banners back in the day used to look like, just like graffiti. It would be like some of the most insane ads and just weird stuff that, sometimes you have to get them approved because, there's always the one guy that pushes it too far, and he's got some like, I
The
don't know.
bikini bottom guy, what was his name again?
Oh,
Remember when he...
Hamoen.
Yeah.
Dennis Hamoen. He wore so I know the guy that fought him in that fight, Ebersol, and he actually, Dana White paid him an extra 50 grand for beating him for wearing those. Like, he was so pissed that Hamoen wore those that he gave Brian basically an extra 50K bonus, and was like, fired Hallman, and was like, fuck you, and I can't believe like you got by with that, and like, thank you for beating that guy. So,
oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But then he also did a disservice to other people, because then Dana started to focus on the outfits and saying, okay, well, we don't want this to ever happen again. Mm-hmm. And then he probably started looking at that, and obviously, as a business entrepreneur, he'd be looking at the revenue and all the other things that go on with it. Yeah. With these fighters looking at fighter pay, what you're sort of leaning in on is, should they be focusing more on fighter pay, or they should be focusing more on brand ownership and their own brand identity? Is that something that would be a better argument to have?
I mean, so now it's so different. So there wasn't the whole social media element back in the day, to where now I think guys can capitalize a lot more. And at the same time, the UFC is also taking care of guys a lot better because they're doing better. They're also providing guys with a lot of opportunities, and being the whole marketing powerhouse that they are, just riding the coattails of them can provide so many more opportunities. Where I think back in the day, basically it was kind of Wild West, even with the top promotions. Like, they were trying as hard as they could. They were trying to control stuff. And I don't know. And so guys had to do their own thing. As of right now, I think it's gotten a lot better all around. And I think they've also backed off a little bit with trying to control as much. So I'm not sure exactly where it stands, now, because when I was there, it was 15 years ago or something. So as of right now, I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, I look at Michael Chandler right now doing his tour on all the different podcasts, building his brand,
Hmm.
and really spending the effort not only in the gym, but on the business side of the fighting.
Hmm.
I think that's something that's very smart for him to do
Yeah.
because it gives him a lot of leverage points when it goes to either doing speaking as on stage and getting paid for it, or leveraging a brand relationship, or being an influencer just as a whole and being able to see a lot of more opportunity fall on his plate.
Yeah, he's doing well, and he's kind of tailor made for it. I mean, he's a hard worker. He's a good looking guy. He's well spoken, and he understands it. He's got good people around. You have to
Mm-hmm.
consider with that, there's not a lot of Michael Chandlers that get into fighting. That's not the typical personality of the guy. Like a lot of these guys are wild, and they're not focused on that. They're doing, he's like his lifestyle. I mean, is different than a lot of the guys. Yeah, a lot of the guys are focused more on the here and now. They want the spotlight. They want to beat people up. They love the training. They love the traveling, the excitement, all that. So he's a standout and, kind of almost an outlier as far as
Mm.
the mindset and personality and lifestyle. A lot of these guys, because that's not how most of them are. You don't usually have such a well-rounded, nice, religious, family man that wants to go in a cage and beat people up for money. To be honest, it usually takes a little bit of a different personality.
I wonder what the
So.
stat is of the champions who fall into that category versus the champions, or even at the champion level. I mean, look at
Hmm.
your pedigree. I mean, you
Hmm.
got a business degree.
Yeah.
You've started multiple businesses. You invested in real estate. You've done all these things. That would mean you'd fall in the same direction as a Michael Chandler sort of persona.
I mean, somewhat, but back in the day when I was doing, I would definitely fall much more, not necessarily, in the same, like, same thing. I wanted the more wild lifestyle, definitely back then, the traveling, the fighting, and I wasn't as astute to him. I wasn't as focused and disciplined as him for sure. I definitely, I think more so as I've aged and grown up and done better, I would be way more aligned with him. But back in the day, I don't think yeah, I didn't start out like that. So
Do you think if you would have taken the mindset you have today and applied it to the earlier version of yourself, would that have changed any things for the better or the worse?
would have changed things completely. So I was never like, I mean, I wasn't super focused on training like I should have been. I was doing too many different things. Um, yeah, yeah. If I would have had that like hard work, consistent, stay in the gym, just the way it should be. Looking back, like you should not be fighting unless you're 100% focused on fighting. Like you got to live it day in day out because the opportunity is going to show up at some point, and you better be ready. So what the biggest thing with me is that I wasn't focused at all. And then when the opportunity came, I was a little bit behind the curve, and then it was like, and then to catch up and stuff. So who knows what would have, but I mean, I think like my first UFC fight, I hadn't stepped foot in the gym for 6, 7 months at all, not one day. And then it was like, oh shit, we got to fight in a month. I go to the gym. I mean, and then it was like first week, I hurt my shoulder because,
Mm,
because I wasn't sharp. I wasn't in the gym. My body wasn't conditioned for it. When I went to
yeah.
shoot on somebody, my timing was off. They sprawled on my shoulder and popped it out. Then we're like dealing with that. It just, I wasn't as focused as I should be. There was, you get distracted easily at that time, and, they do different stuff. You don't know what's coming. And same thing. I was supposed to be on the Ultimate Fighter. That was like same thing 6, 7 months before they called me, told me I was an alternate. I didn't get on. I went and did a fight. I went and had like the corrective eye surgery, and so I was gonna take like the 3 weeks off as I should. And it's same thing. It turned into 6, 7 months. The manager called me. He's like, "Where are you at, dude? You want to fight in like a month?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You been in the gym?" I'm like, "No." You still want to do it? Yeah, sure. I'll be back in a couple days. So But
I just, it's funny you mentioned those things. I just had one of our teammates. He had the exact same thing. Is he had the opportunity to fight on a card that Dana White came into Dana White looking for a fight, and he was supposed to be in that card, but then he got corrective eye surgery. His name's Anton Petotsky, and he ended up then fighting with Unified a little bit later, and then absolutely dominated that match. But the fight he could have had in front of Dana could have been a pivotal moment. And what you're saying is any time there afterwards, there could be that call, and you got to be ready at that very moment to make that happen by being 100% focused on it, because success follows attention. That's one of my firm beliefs.
Yeah, it's attention to detail and day in, day out, because it's the same thing now. I mean, there's a little bit of luck, but it's the same thing. It's just preparation, preparation, preparation. Then when you get the opportunity, if you're ready, you'll do well. And it was like, a lot of the fights too, where it was always playing kind of like catch up and I was getting away with it for so long. Like, I haven't trained for a while, but I could still do it. And then I would do well. And then it would just emphasize like, oh, I don't need to be in the gym that much. And same thing. I'm trying to make money. I'm trying to do these different businesses. I'm traveling. I'm distracted by women. I'm distracted by just whatever. And just thinking like, I'll get back to it here. I'll focus on it here. And I would always kind of get obsessed with different things at different times. And so it's very much so where I would go and get obsessed with something else or focus on something else. And that was in the background. And so when the opportunities would pop up, though, same thing back in the day, a lot of times you weren't getting you didn't have this team that was looking at you as, it wasn't a huge money thing. So there wasn't all these people that cared as much or were focused on you, or the same thing. They didn't give you the good information. A lot of times you would get calls from promoters to yourself, and a promoter calling a fighter, they're going to fight. There was a lot of times basically, hey, you want to fight in a week, at this weight for almost no money, last minute. And you're like, yeah. And then you hang up the phone. You're like, why did I just say yeah? Like, what the fuck? I'm not even training. That's a super tough guy. It's like no money. Logistically wise, it's just a bad decision, but you agree to it because you almost can't help yourself. It's like you should never even be making those decisions. You should have, especially now, like a team and a manager, and they should be like, okay, objectively, has he been in the gym? Is he ready? Is he training? Is he on point? Okay, let's, that works. That's a good idea. We'll call him and check. Not, you call the fighter and he's, whatever position he's at, and it's not the best one, and they're always going to say yeah, and they knew that too. They would contact all the fighters directly, like, hey, you want to do this? And guys would say yes all the time. It's kind of funny and laughable how when me and my friends always talk about like the calls that we would get, the decisions that we'd make. Like, what are we doing, dude? Why was that a good idea? That was so dumb.
But sometimes the dumbest decisions we make sometimes make the best stories. And so, those are good for the past. They're not good for our future, but they're definitely good for the past.
Yeah. And when you're talking about something as kind of dangerous and high risk, high reward as fighting with such a small time period, that a small window for you to kind of succeed or not succeed, those mistakes can be extremely detrimental. And so that same thing happens to a lot of guys, man. They take the wrong fight. It can completely change. I mean, Volkanovski recently, that last minute fight against one of the best guys in the world, he was like drinking, not in the gym, super overweight, but he felt bad and he thought he could fix it by taking a fight. And so for his feelings to feel better and to try and get back in the win column, instead of preparing and doing it right, where he could have maybe beat him, maybe not, but he would have known that his best self went in there for the rematch, and whatever happened. Now he's in a way worse position, and he's not going to ever know or probably get that opportunity again because he basically took a stupid fight. I mean, and
well, he's a rugby player mentality, and the rugby player mentality is obviously, there is some time in the pub, and there's a game every week, and it probably is a hard thing for him to reconcile the fighter, which is there's a very big difference between sports and spectacles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a sport is every week you've got a tournament or you got an event, and you're part of a whole, theme of activity, where a spectacle like a fight is that moment can critically change your path
Hmm.
in the future.
I mean, he even said, I mean, the fight he had with Islam, I mean, a lot of people thought he won,
Hmm.
if he did or not, but basically an amazing performance. And he was like depressed and devastated by that performance that he didn't win. And literally talked about how depressed he was. He was drinking, had no purpose. And then basically he needed that fight. He took the fight and got knocked out,
Yeah.
and then, and then he takes the other fight and gets knocked out again. And it's like the trajectory now, it's going to be very hard for him to get back, like
Yeah.
physically, mentally, everything. Yeah, it can change way too quick. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously hindsight, and what amazing story if he went in last minute off a bar stool and beat one of the best in the world. But it's too high risk, I
Yeah.
think, to be doing that kind of stuff.
I
And
think to be
yeah,
at the top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1%, getting
yeah,
off a bar stool into a ring is a very bad idea.
yeah. But that's the whole thing with the fighter's
Yeah.
mentality. Like, you think you're going to win. He knows he can do it, and he could on any given day, he could beat anybody. But
Hmm.
same thing, Islam is in the gym every day and he's training and he's sharp. And and then those are just the littlest things at the top. We're going back to Chandler McGregor. Like, McGregor's not doing everything right as good as he is, and Chandler is. And that point, Islam's doing everything perfect, and Volkanovski's not. And then when you have those, the top
Yeah.
guys of already the top guys, it's
But the one thing that
just
Volkanovski is doing really well is his marketing endeavors.
yeah,
I don't know if
yeah,
you've watched his videos of him as the old guy answering the phone.
yeah, yeah. It's good. Yeah.
His marketing has really gone to next level.
Uh-huh.
And Connor, obviously, yes, he's been a great fighter. There's no question about that. But his ability to be able to market himself as a brand has been second to none. So
Hmm.
the idea is for when people are starting to look at their exit, and obviously you're not fighting in the UFC anymore, you're on to the next chapter of your life. What did that look like, that transition? What had to change in your mind to kind of get prepared that those highs and lows of being in the octagon aren't there anymore? What did you replace it with? How did you handle that transition?
So it's extremely hard for most people, and I think only kind of time away will get you kind of acclimated to it. It's hard because um, when you've experienced such highs, just everything else kind of seems boring. And I think, just looking back too, I would always suggest anyone that's doing that, to immediately like dive into something else as fast as possible to focus on. I mean, same thing. It was hard for a long time. I actually I didn't end up doing it, and luckily, because of how kind of life changed, but I started training a lot with guys I was a private contractor overseas for
Mm-hmm.
private security, fly out. So I was doing a lot of that. I was about to get hired by a top company, training a lot with the Academy, Blackwater, all the guys, and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of more than anything, it wasn't the money, it was the thrill seeking and just something that could kind of match that. And then with that, I got to a point where I had to kind of make a decision where with my youngest daughter, she was going back to school. She was finally ready to go to school. But it's cool because I had her and I was really able to focus on just being the best dad and spending the time with her. And I got to a point where it was like, okay, now I can go with one of these top companies, but it's going to be all these months overseas, and it's dangerous. And a lot of the guys are like, man, you got a good life. A lot of these guys go over there, they get blown up, a lot of stuff happens, and it's not a good idea. And that's when I kind of decided to go back to school and study acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, overseas and do this, or do I, go this route? And so I ended up going that route, which I'm super happy about, because then other stuff happened. Her mom ended up passing away. So if I was like overseas or doing that stuff, and something would have happened to me, and then something happened to her mom, as it did, it would have been,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it was kind of definitely the right path, but only really finally now am I able to really just like look back and kind of appreciate the fight career and be away from it. Because when you're in that world so deep, man, you only think about the losses, you think about what you couldn't do. You don't really appreciate that just to get in there and do it is cool. That most people they respect it. They think it's awesome because it's something they would never do. And it's only it's only people that you wouldn't associate with or talk that might talk badly on it or think negatively about it. And so yeah, I didn't do a lot of things right, but at the same time, I did do it with the best of my ability and knowledge at the time. And I also am somewhat glad that throughout the years, and maybe why I didn't reach the top of the top, is because I always had somewhat of an exit and foresight into the way that like this isn't a lifelong thing, and it could like there needs to be something after because like I always
Mm.
had in my mind 35 I was done. Like no matter what happened. That's the end point. It shouldn't go past that. And same thing early on when I was training. I was 100% in, but I saw a lot of guys, like especially at the boxing gym, like these guys aren't good. Like they aren't good physically, they aren't good mentally, they aren't good financially. And like how can I avoid that? I don't want to be that. And when I was 21, like the 40-year-old, he's old, like, but and he's also broke and he's also physically not doing that good. And just like,
Mm.
I don't want to, I don't want to be like that, man. I don't, I need to make sure and kind of protect myself and not be in that position because that doesn't look like a good place to be. And a lot of guys end up like that. And it's pretty sad.
Now, you were able to generate through all the business stuff that you did an income that allowed you to take some time off and just live off the income. And I think you moved down to Mexico is what we were chatting about and had a
Yeah.
little bit of a
So
journey that way.
Yeah, so that was good with I was an intern while I was getting my doctorate. I was pretty close to being done. So COVID hit. My daughter's mom passed away. It was just like super rough time. I didn't want to deal with we weren't going to sit inside and be sad and locked away and follow the rules. I sold everything. And I was like, okay, we're moving to Mexico. It was the freest place to be. I moved down there. I was basically 40 years old. I had a good bank account. I had residual income from the stuff, and I was at a point where, as long as I was smart, I would never have to work again. I was fine.
Mm.
There was enough money coming in every month, and still to where, especially living down there, and I didn't have any bills anymore. We had our phone bill. That was it. So it
Yeah.
was like $100 a month, and that was it. And like we rented a nice villa. I think it was like $2,500 a month, but that was cleaning, like on the water. Everything was nice. I bought a motorcycle to ride around and, like a huge security plus more money coming in. But it was like we were sitting on the beach every day. There wasn't really much of a purpose where I thought I kind of wanted that freedom and got it through, not good circumstances per se. But it was like I could do whatever I want. And I kind of thought that being able to completely do whatever I want every day with having no responsibility was kind of a good thing, which I learned pretty fast. It's not. Sitting on the beach and waiting for food every single day, it gets old pretty quick, no matter how beautiful it is, no matter how good the food is, like the beaches, the surroundings. If you don't have that purpose, that responsibility, all that stuff, it gets old quick. So ended up kind of fast forwarding. We ended up back in Northern California. We were going to move to Casablanca. There was another outbreak. The school shut down. They canceled our flight. So we ended up here. My daughter was started to do really well. She loves it here. It was
Mm.
like, okay, so now I got to start to rebuy the stuff that I sold. And prices had gone up a bunch. So
Mm.
rebought a house and a rental property. I get the vehicles again. I mean, everything, because we didn't have very much again. So went through a lot of the money that I had up, buying the houses and the vehicles and getting, reset up. And that same thing with the inflation, with the cost of everything, with, the lifestyle, which is a good lifestyle with that. like the traveling and the all the activities that my daughter likes to do, that money that's coming in every month and that depletion of a huge chunk of funds rebuying the houses and the cars and everything has gone down substantially, and it doesn't go as far. So as of now, starting to kind of explore how to, and build and increase that residual income and that monthly, because that 10 grand that was coming in, that in my mind, same thing 20 years ago or 15 years ago, like, man, if I'm making 10 grand a month free and clear, I can live off that. I'm fine. It doesn't have to be extravagant. I want to eat good food. I want to have fun. When I swipe my card, if I can fill up my gas tank, if I can eat good, if I can hang out with my daughter, we can do the fun stuff, take some trips. I don't need nothing too crazy, but that 10 grand anymore doesn't, it doesn't do much, man. Especially
No, it doesn't.
when problems
It's
pop
interesting
up too.
when you look at the value of currency and how it's shifted. I think I looked at a stat that very unique stat that back in, I think it was 1914, I think it was about, I don't know, $14 per ounce or something. We're going to say maybe 14, 18, whatever it was. You needed about 250 ounces of gold, and that would buy you a pretty nice house. And if you fast forward to today, if you had 250 ounces of gold, it would buy you that same house.
Yeah.
So if we would have just stayed with gold as the way from the very beginning in 1914, well, that's not the beginning, but in 1914 till now, nothing would have changed in the value of a currency.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that changed was the currency that back then was about $3,000 to get the same, and now it's about $800,000 to get the same amount of gold, give or take.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing, is the currency of the things that shifted, not the value of anything. It's just a devaluation of the currency. And that's what's putting everybody into the idea that we've got to get more productive to defend ourselves against the shifting value of currency.
Yeah. They're shifting to definitely more asset based instead of cash heavy, to where, I was at for a long time, but like I said, I had no plan of ever moving back to the States. I thought we were gone and going to stay gone, and our life is going to be different. And then with coming back and, and buying the stuff again. Yeah. It's gotten quite expensive for sure.
But I think you find a little bit more joy, and this is me projecting here, but I think you find a little bit more joy in the fact that you moved from that, I would say, sort of sedentary process of just relaxing to more an active process of being productive. I know this guy, Grant Cardone, when he was interviewed on Graham Stephan's podcast, Graham asked him and said, "Do you want your daughter to be happy?" And then Grant kind of paused and said, "No, I want my daughter to be productive because that creates fulfillment." I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And do you find now that you've transitioned to more from a feeling happy, go lucky, sitting on the beach, waiting for meals, to then getting sort of that's not happy, to now the point of getting in production and seeing fulfillment out of that production?
Yeah. Fulfillment is so much more with this. And it was really a gift to get that, especially at this age, because I think a lot of people will never get that. They'll never get to a point where they have enough money to have the choice to never work again, and then to spend a decent amount of time in a place like I did, experiencing that, and then realizing that this isn't the way to go. So you have to kind of get it and live it to realize that that's not what you want. So it completely changed my mindset, because I was able to achieve the goal, and then now I can adjust. Like I thought I was done with kids completely. I thought I just wanted, money, free life, no responsibility. I didn't want to, no kids. I didn't want to get married. It was just like, I'm going to do what I want. And that's the way life is, where I've completely changed in the way. I would love to have another kid, a family. Same thing. We came back with the properties, with all the dogs, with my daughter, all the stuff that she has, the stuff in the community. I like, give me all the responsibility. I'll take it. Some days I think to myself, what did I get into? I want to go back to Mexico. Like I had it made. Like same thing. This is too much. What am I doing? But overall, on the good days, and if I can remind myself actually how I felt after the novelty wears off. Yeah, it's much better. I would much rather take the stress and the fulfillment and the responsibility and being active and a part of something than really just like selfishly sitting there and doing nothing. And the big thing was my daughter, even to me, like she noticed early on as a kid, as a young kid, like, okay, yeah, we can stay here on the beach, but like what what is that going to do for me as I grow up? Like, like what kind of life do you want to see me live? Like, I'm not going to progress. She even said that, like, there's no progression. Like, we're, you know,
Your daughter said that
just,
to you.
yeah, there's really,
That's
there's
amazing.
going
How
to
old
be
was she
no,
when she said that?
she was 10, 9 or 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Just, she was just going to be like, okay, another person on the beach, you know, like, hanging out, maybe surfing, smoking weed, drinking some beer, living like, you know, a lot of the just kind of how it was. It's amazing for that, and if that's the life that you want, like awesome. And it's and I think though too, if I wish I could bring a lot of my family and friends to that area and then build something from there. But it was like without without having a family there, without having a way to necessarily contribute to the community besides maybe helping out with jiu-jitsu and stuff.
Mm.
There wasn't a lot that I could kind of give back there. There wasn't a lot I could build from there. There wasn't, same thing. She knew that as far as the education and growth and just overall life, she doesn't like the water that much either. So she's not gonna, like, if she was super into surfing, she might have had a different idea, um, but like, yeah, there wasn't gonna be much growth just for her, just hanging on the beach the rest of her life. So,
Well, for your growth trajectory, it's great that your daughter didn't like surfing, because then you were
yeah,
able to make that pivot into where you are today and to see what the
yeah,
future can look like. So
oh
that's
yeah,
actually
yeah,
special. Yeah.
yeah. She might, yeah. I mean, if she wanted to be a pro surfer and something, that's probably the spot to be because there's a lot of top level pros there that are very good, and the waves are impressive. The guys are super cool, and that's yeah. If you want to be a big wave pro surfer, check out Puerto Escondido and just yeah, live it up and yeah, surf. But I'm
Beautiful,
not that
beautiful
I'm
spot.
yeah, I'm not that good at
So,
surfing, so
so what is the future for you now? If we go from today and kind of project a little bit, where are we going there?
I'm just really continuing on. Same thing I touched a little bit on my daughter's mom passing away. I'm just trying to really focus on her being good, more than anything, continuing on with the property that I built. It's got a couple houses on it. I want to put some other on it. I would really like to have a spot where I could move family and friends onto the property, help each other out a little bit collectively, live and grow. I would really like to in the next couple years, get married, have another kid, at least one, maybe two, keep growing, we do some, breed the dogs, also training people as far as I enjoy doing that, especially working with some of the kids. The big thing too is helping out people with nutrition, with fitness, with overall longevity, health. I would really like to finish my doctorate if I can find a school that I think I might start flying to Arizona. I've been talking to them, seeing if they'll take my credits, if I can go and finish it from there. Just really kind of continuing to expand with that and focus on those things and hopefully just do a lot of good and increase that the amount of money to a little bit more so I can help take care of a little bit more of my people around me a little bit better. So
Yeah, I think that's huge. When you look at the idea of money, to me, money is one of those things that people can attribute so many thoughts around it, either negative or positive. And to me, money is just really translates an exchange of value
hmm
for an ability to create impact, however you want it to be.
yeah,
And so I think the more that people reconcile with that, and that it's their duty and responsibility to create impact with their money, it becomes more important to then start to consolidate it.
yeah. For me, it's always it's just like you said, but it's freedom to me.
Yeah.
It's freedom from worry. It's the ability to same thing to help out. Like stuff comes up, man. Like there's health stuff, there's like
Hmm.
to have the freedom to not worry, to where like same thing, you could do to pay for your families, to the dinners and the friends and take the people on the trips and the experiences and not having to take shit from other people is a big one for me.
Yep.
Just doing stuff that I want to do and having the freedom to not have to say yes to things that I don't want to do is a
Yep.
big thing that money buys you. And that's, yeah, super important.
That's an important lesson for fighters as well, is to know that the no's are just as important as the yeses.
Yeah, probably more important too. And to be able
Yeah.
to get in a position, because a lot of times people can't say no because they're tied in. They've got just even in life, they've got the bills, they've got the this, they've got the that. They're not in a position to hold off or to say no, and people know that. Like you 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 have to say yes to that fight when you shouldn't. You have to say yes to that job when you shouldn't. When you have to, yeah, you end up doing a lot of things that you don't want to do, and it just translates into your attitude, it just pushes out everywhere. Um,
Yep. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So for people to reach out to you, the best way to reach out is on Instagram at the Brody_Farber. I know you got a lot of great content there. I definitely did look through that content, and I had to dig deeper, mind you, and I
yeah,
did find a page on November 2nd, 2019, where
yeah,
you're surrounded by people in a gi, and so
yeah,
it can happen.
yeah. It does occasionally. Same thing. That was a day of training where good friends like, hey, come train with us. It was all guys that I have a lot of respect for. They're doing gi, so I'll put it on. So to my instructors and people I've trained with, like, yeah, if I respect you and that's what we're doing and that's what needs to be done, I'll occasionally do it.
All
But
right. So when
overall,
I show up in your neighborhood and I bring my gi, I'll know how you feel by
yeah.
your no or your yes.
Yeah, the 11-year blue belt. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. The sandbag, the greatest sandbagger of all time.
The greatest sandbagger of all time. There you go.
Yeah,
I'll take that title.
yeah,
Man, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and I think you've dropped so many lessons for people in business, for people in athletics, and in fighting, for people to learn themselves through those processes what they should and shouldn't do, and it's great to have this chat with you, Brody. It's been really an honor to share the time.
yeah. I appreciate it. We'll do it again anytime you want.
Man, it sounds good, my man. And guys, this is the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. We will see you on the next one.